Winners and losers: Kahi, George, and NBA free agency's second act. NBA free agency took a wild turn early Saturday morning when Kawhi Leonard, in conjunction with Paul George, flew out of Oklahoma City to join Kahi in Los Angeles. The coordinated for basically an entire season, the Clippers did everything short of tampering with Kawhi Leonard. They from his TV. Of course, Leonard didn't join the team alone. He did so with both gambits, which occurred when the object of affection was under contract, paid off. The Clippers don't. When Anthony Davis, there was some chatter amongst basketball writers if an unexpected team would take a chance on him. With only 1 year, the Thunder were applauded for taking a chance on George, though at the time, they seemed to have acquired him for a steal. PG Reese, Toronto at least has a championship to show for Kahi, which is the point of all of this, and is no small consolation. But what do the Thunder face? Probably more difficult questions. Do they start? I certainly don't think either Toronto or Oklahoma City regret acquiring Leonard or George in the slightest. Both were smart moves. The Thunder traded Paul George, a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate, a 2019 MVP finalist, and top 10 player in the NBA for a point guard who finished 6th in Rookie of the Year voting, an expiring contract and 5 first-round picks. Shai Gilgeous, for me, the competitive aspect of this trade bothers me. By trading George, Presti extracted a haul from the Clippers, but it concerns me he reportedly only really negotiated with 2 teams. The market for some superstar trades are tricky, and the team losing one practically never gets an equal return. But I do think there are so many layers here. Perhaps the Thunder, but don't forget about the Celtics. They were the last team. I don't pretend to know the best way to build a team in the NBA, and Presti is literally devoting his life to weighing the risks and rewards of trades like this one. I do wonder how Presti has traded away James Harden, Serge Ibaka and Paul George, and had to see Kevin Durant leave for the team that beat his Thunder in that year's playoffs. I don't think Meanwhile, Westbrook has now seen a second running mate choose to play with another superstar instead of him. I don't imagine that the Raptors won a championship with Kawhi Leonard. He left for lots of Lakers photoshops will never see the light of day after Kahi chose the Clippers. LeBron and AD.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park.